Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Dynamo Workshop webinar. My name is Carolina, and I work at both marketing and sales here at MicroCAD. Today, we will have Phil Marshall presenting, and this webinar in particular is a specific one because it is a hybrid event. So we are coming to you live here from our Watertown office, and we have a few attendees coming in. You might hear them in the background as they're still kind of making their way in. But we do have this live event, and we want to make sure that it's interactive as possible. So on the left-hand side, you'll find that we have a questions box. You can ask Phil to revisit a step or ask him any Dynamo question. This is your time, so you want to make sure that you make the most of it. And in the upper right-hand corner, we also have access to our MicroCAD website. You also can see our YouTube, and we post all our webinars there at the end, so you can then share this event with some colleagues later on. But without further ado, I'll pass it on to Phil.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. This is an unusual situation where we have people live in the room, and we also have the people who are remotely connected. And I got to tell you, I'm so glad that we're getting back to doing some person-to-person, face-to-face kind of interactions. That's how you can help learn and help expand. So what we're going to be doing today is working with the Dynamo, and we'll actually walk through a simple Dynamo example so you get to see Dynamo in action. But to make that happen, I'm going to share my screen and turn off my camera because the screen's much more interesting than I am. So I've got my fingers crossed, and I think you should be able to see my screen at this time. All righty. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be talking about what Revit is, what Dynamo is, what it's good for, what it's not good for, and then we'll start to get into some hands-on. The first thing I'll mention is that there is a file that you would need to download if you're going to walk through step by step. It's under the URL microcad3d.com/Dynamo. It's only 6 meg. It's a simple, ugly little building, but we're going to be using that for our Dynamo example. Those of you in the room have that file in your upper left of your desktop. So that's where that file is. We've already loaded that for you. All right, so let's talk a little bit about what Dynamo is and what it's good for. First, Dynamo is an object-oriented programming tool, and this is really important to know. What object-oriented means is that Dynamo works with things that are different kinds of objects. So it will work with a wall, it will work with a door, it will work with a reference line. These are objects, and the object type is really important. If the Dynamo node expects to see a window, when you give it a door, it's going to blow up and say, hey, I don't know what you're doing. So you really have to be aware of what the objects are and how they work. It is a diagrammatic, a graphical programming tool. So you create these nodes that are the actions you want to do. So you may have a node that says, give me a parameter value. And then the wires that connect the nodes are the nouns saying this is the data. So you would have a wire that represents a particular door, and you'd have a verb that says, give me the name, the room that the door is going to, so that way you get the information flowing. What's unusual about Dynamo for the Autodesk world is it is a open source programming language, meaning that it's available to anyone, anywhere to do their own programming and setup. And there's a lot of forums available, both within and outside of the Autodesk environment, that lets you ask questions and work with Dynamo to integrate with other packages. Those of you who are out of architecture school recently, you'll see that Dynamo is very similar to Rhino's Grasshopper program. So if you're familiar with Grasshopper, this is going to be very familiar to you. Grasshopper does a great job for geometry construction, and Dynamo does a very similar job for construction geometry. But Dynamo also provides some MEP functionality that the Grasshopper doesn't, and it does a lot of work with annotation and drawing construction. And a lot of what you can use Dynamo for is creating and managing your drawings, making sure that they are consistent. Because it is open source, a lot of third-party developers and individuals have created packages of tools that they found useful, and they contribute them freely to GitHub, which is a place to go to download packages of solutions. All free, all user supported, and because it's open source, then you download it and use them as necessary. So it's a great community for developers because it is open source and everyone shares nicely. And the other thing about Dynamo that I wanted to point out is there are things that Dynamo isn't particularly good for, but you would want to use the API, whether it's the API from Revit or the API from Forge, to do the things that Dynamo doesn't do well. And Dynamo is a great first step. So if you're working in Dynamo, get some experience on working with an object-oriented programming system, then you can go into the APIs from Revit or Forge and using Python or VBNet and develop some more programming now that you've got your hands into what programming is all about. So a lot of what you can do in Dynamo is a stepping stone to get into the APIs. It's like going into the pool at the shallow end, making sure that you've got this and you can splash around, but now when it's time to get to the deep end, you've got that experience. All right, what's Dynamo really good for? Obviously, the one thing that is really good for is repetitive tasks. If you find yourself doing the same thing again and again and again, the first time you'll say, this is painful, but you do it anyway. And the second time it says, I think I've done this before, but I got to do it again. This is another project, yeah. And the third time you say, now, time to make a Dynamo program to make this happen. And so with this approach, what you're saying is that there are some things that you're going to be doing project after project after project, make it into a Dynamo program, and it can be very productive by doing it that way. Dynamo is also good for linking to exterior applications, so you can extract data from the Revit database and take that and put it into other third-party applications, or vice versa. You could have a third-party application that drives you. Maybe you've got a spec system and you want to pull those specs and pull them into Revit, so you can use Dynamo to exchange data with those applications. You also can use Dynamo for design verification, like design rules. For example, not that there is a package that does it, but suppose someone put together an ADA verification package, it would make sense that Dynamo would be good for going into looking at the hallways, looking at stairs, looking at ramps, and verifying that they meet your ADA requirements. That's the kind of thing that you could do in Dynamo. And I wouldn't be surprised if someone has done it and made a package of ADA verification and put it onto GitHub. Something else that Dynamo is good for is if you want to make sure that all of your drawings are consistent. The drawings I do for this project, you want them to look like the drawings you do for that project. And of course, Revit templates is a good start there, but you could use Dynamo to enforce that drawing consistency, or maybe even to the point where you could create some detailed drawings automatically using Dynamo, because Dynamo is strong on the drawing side. And lastly, Dynamo is good for those things that are awkward in Revit. Yeah, everybody knows there's a particular bête noire of the things that you do in Revit, and this is awkward, but that's the only way you can do it in Revit. Well, likely you could do the same thing in Dynamo and get around the awkwardness. So we find people using Dynamo for those kinds of applications. What is it not good for, and this is just as important, perhaps even more important, is Dynamo really isn't intended, nor is it appropriate for a complete application development. So if you wanted to create an application that creates hyperbolic roofs and out of stretchable material, and you want to verify that that roof is strong enough to withstand hurricanes, and you're going to stretch it over an arbitrary frame, that's probably not a Dynamo application. That's going to take much more work and much more integration and much more calculation capability. That's going to be hard to do. So to do something like that, that's where you get into the APIs. What Dynamo also doesn't do is it doesn't automatically track live data. So if you go through and verify that these hallways are ADA compliant using a Dynamo program, and now somebody comes along and moves a wall, well, there's not going to be a red light that flashes and say, this is a problem. At least not automatically. You have to go back to Dynamo and say, now run this again and verify. Then you'd get the red light. But it doesn't track live data. So if you have an application that's dependent on updating as the model updates, Dynamo may not be the best choice. Now, Dynamo may be a good package in the back, and you have an API sitting on that does track live data, and that API kicks off a Dynamo program. That'd be a good way to approach that, if indeed you have that kind of a situation. And the last thing at Dynamo is a little awkward in working with is deployment to lots of users. If you've got 200 designers and you want them all to use the same Dynamo program and you want to make it easy and clean for them, you've got to do a little bit more. So again, This is typically done with a mix of Dynamo and API. So in the API, you create a ribbon. In that ribbon, you create commands. When someone clicks on those commands, then you could kick off the Dynamo program that represents that. But that's both Dynamo and API to make that very efficient. And also make it deployable to all of the users, because Dynamo by default is expecting to be available on each individual's workstation with the same release and the same version. So you do have to worry about version control of the application of Revit and of the Dynamo app also. So if you're looking at running something to an extremely large number of users, you're probably looking at a mix of Dynamo and the API. All right, so what it's good for, what it's bad for, we know now how we're going to go about it. What I'd like to do today is talk about the workshop, and the workshop is going to be step by step, making a very simple Dynamo program so you can see how it works. Those of you who are here will do it live in front of us, and if you have a problem, just let Nicole know and she'll help you out. Those of you who are remote connected, you can walk through the steps just as we do here, and we'll try and answer the questions from both the groups, both the local groups and from the remote groups as we go along. But please have patience because, like I say, we've doing this hybrid thing live and also in Zoom. I'm not sure how this is going to work, to be honest. As you ask your questions, I'm not sure how I can get those questions back answered to you as quickly as you're going to want. So we'll try and do what we can to respond to the questions in real time. And the one question certainly that we will want to know about is if you're having trouble in keeping up, let me know and I can proceed slower. Or if you find that I'm wasting your time, then you can tell me and I'll talk faster. I can talk really fast if you want me to. But what we're going to do is trying to make everybody get through this exercise, because that's the whole point. Have some success in using Dynamo, and that's why I'd like to make sure we get. All right, first a matter of terminology, just so we all understand what we're talking about. Dynamo consists of a series of nodes. Those are these boxes, and the nodes represent actions. They're the verbs. So these are the things that are going to happen. So for example, this node is get parameter by name. So we give it a name that gives us back a parameter. Every node has a set of inputs and has a set of outputs. The inputs could be individual objects or they could be lists of objects. And it's typical that it would be more likely to be lists of objects. So you give it 5 doors or you give it 6 rooms, and for each of those objects, the same thing happens. The output, similarly, is a list. So if I give it 6 rooms and we're looking for a particular parameter, it'll give me 6 parameter outputs. So you should expect lists in, get lists out. That's the way they typically work. Sometimes you will get a warning or an error or problem that occurs. In that case, the node will turn a different color. In this case, it's turning yellow and there's a warning. You just hover over the warning and it'll tell you what it didn't like about what you're just doing. By the way, if you hover over the name of the node, then it's going to give you a short discussion of what that node is, how it works, what it expects for input, and what it provides as output. So after you put the node into your graph, you can hover over there and make sure you got the node that you expected. And then the last thing I want to mention is that when the node executes and gets an output list, you can hover over this corner where it says auto, and it gives you what the outputs are. So it's a quick way of verifying that you got what you expected. A couple other things I'll mention is that the object type is very important. If the node says it wants a parameter as input, you can't give it a string. You have to give it a parameter. And it's very finicky about that. You have to make sure you have the object type done the right way. Lists, like I said before, are typically used for input and they generate lists as output. All of those lists are objects of the same type. So you could have a list of 12 doors, but you can't have a list of 10 doors, 2 windows, and a reference line. The lists are homogeneous. All of the objects we're working with, the names of the nodes, the names of parameters, all of the things that we're going to provide names to, it's all case sensitive, and it makes a difference whether there's spaces in there or any other special characters. So you do have to, if you're putting in a name or something, you have to make sure it's exactly correct. It's going to not like it if you put a space in or you use uppercase or lowercase where it isn't the same. And the last thing I'll mention that all of the Revit elements, all of the objects have unique IDs. So if you're running a Dynamo program, you can look and see, oh, here's an object. Where is that room? You can go back to the Revit model and find out where that ID is. And that way you can keep track that the Dynamo program is doing what you expect it to. All right, so those are the basics. I just want to make sure that when I'm using words, you understand what the meanings of those words are. Let's get into a real world Dynamo example. So here's the problem statement. So we've got a design and we've built a simple building, put some rooms in it, put some doors in it, and we've got a couple of stair towers. But what we want to do is to make sure that the doors on the stair tower are a particular type of door. So I'm making an assumption here, and it's always important when you're doing any programming that you enumerate your assumptions, because that way when people come in, don't meet your assumptions, and the Dynamo program doesn't do what you expect, that's the reason. So in this case, very simply, we're going to make something where we're making assumption that the rooms in the building are already set up, that the rooms for the stair tower include the word stairs with a capital S, that there's doors already in place, but we don't know what types they are. But we do know that we already have a type called 36" by 84 fire resistant. There's a door type, and that's the door that we want on all of the stair towers. So that's the problem statement for today. Fairly simple problem. You would do it manually if you had half a dozen doors. If you had a building with 300 doors, maybe the Dynamo program would be useful. All right, so whenever you've got a problem statement, then the analysis is to break it down to say, what steps do I need to do to solve this problem? And then synthesis is bringing those steps together and say, how do I solve it as a complete solution? So the analysis is pretty easy. First, I'm going to find all the doors in the building. Next, I'll find a list of the from to rooms for those doors. So I know for every door where it's coming from, where it's going to. I'll filter for only the doors that are opening to a room called stairs, that has a stairs in the name of the room. And for those, I'll change the door type. So this is the statement we're going to achieve. All right, so now we're going to do it in Dynamo. All right, so now let's go into Revit. And if everyone can start up Revit 2022. So in 2022, we're using the initial release of 2022. I think any of the 2022 releases should be fine. Okay, I thought we checked those out last night. You're running 2022?
Yeah, 2022 is not logged in.
This one is working right here if you want to just switch to this computer. This one's logged in already.
All right, so like everybody in Revit 2022, and what we're going to do is we're going to open that file that you downloaded from the URL I gave you earlier. It's called Simple Example. It's got 2 floors. It's ugly, but it'll be fine for what we're working on today. Those of you in the room, that should be in a file on your desktop in the upper left. So we'll go open Simple Example. And on mine, it opened up to a door schedule. I think all of you are open to a door schedule. This is a typical schedule you would have, and it shows all the doors are in this building. I think there are 18 of them. And it says what type they are, where they're coming from, where they're going to, typical store schedule that you would use. But notice that none of them have a fire rating. So none of them are suitable for the stair tower. Also note that some of these doors.
So Phil, just to clarify, people should have both Revit up and the file that which you sent?
They should open Revit for the file that we supplied them.
And the file for people looking at the webinar online is in the question box. So if you want to see.
All right, so you gave the URL in the question box. Thank you. So the file name is simpleexample.rvt, and you find it by going to the MicroCAD website. It's in the question box. Okay, so I wanted to point out here that first, we know the doors to stair towers aren't the right doors, And second, we also note that some of these doors open to the exterior. So like this door here is from room number A, and it goes to the outside. There is no door, no room on the other side of that door. And this is significant, we'll see when we start looking at the Dynamo programming, because that means when we find out what room that's going to, it's going to give us a null value, and we have to handle that. All right, so let's go to floor plan level 1. Like I said, it's an ugly building. I didn't do anything special about it. I just wanted it good enough to go through this example.
And Phil, there's no file for Revit 2020?
That's correct. It's 2022, that file.
Okay.
So if you're using Revit 2020, just simply make a very simple building that looks something like this, throw some doors in, and a room called with the word stairs in it. I'll give you a minute to do that. All right, so what I wanted to point out is that in this building that we're working with, we have some rooms named A, B, C, D. We have 2 stair towers, an east stair and a west stairs. We've got doors in place, but none of these doors are fire resistant. Some of the doors open to the outside. So that's kind of situation that we have. Remember my assumptions. So we've got the assumptions all met for this particular kind of building. All right, what we want to do is go through and change these kinds of doors, the doors open to the stair tower, to the fire resistant doors. So to do that, we're going to be creating a Dynamo program. Dynamo is under the Manage ribbon. And under the Manage ribbon, we can go to the Dynamo command, and that will kick off Dynamo. Dynamo is built into Revit. When you install Revit, it installs Dynamo automatically. But it does come up in its own window. And for this window, it shows you a lot of the help functions that are available. There's a discussion forum. There's the website that's run by the Dynamo community. There's a primer on how to use Dynamo, getting started document, and some tutorials. So there's lots of help to make you successful in doing your work in Dynamo. And of course, MicroCAD provides training also and consulting. So if you need more help, then we can provide that. Down here is the GitHub repository. This is where people, third parties, and individuals put their packages. And these are freely available. They aren't sold. They're all free. And they're provided for community use as necessary. So there's lots of stuff out there. Well, in this example, we'll use a package from the repository in order to show you what it looks like to bring in some of those packages, because there's lots of good stuff out there. What we're doing, though, is we're going to create a new Dynamo program. So everybody click on New, please. And now we see the Dynamo interface. The Dynamo interface can do one of 2 things. If we click on here, then we can show the graphics of the objects that we're creating. So if we were going to build walls and roofs and fancy stuff in geometry, then we'd want to see the geometry of those objects. If we want to see the programming, which is what we're going to be doing today, because we're not working with geometry today, then we'd want to show the graph, which shows you the nodes that you're working with. So let's leave this on the graphical approach. The other option I'll mention is on the lower left. There's an option whether you automatically run this Dynamo program or you manually run it. So the automatic runs anytime there's a change to the Dynamo program. The manual, it wouldn't run until you say go ahead and run it. For program development, I always like to do it automatic, because then you see your mistakes quickly and you can resolve them. You may want to go to manual in a production environment if, for example, the Dynamo program does lots and lots of work and it takes 3 minutes to run. You don't want that to kick off automatically. You want to say, now go ahead and do it. I need a cup of coffee. All right. The biggest thing about the Dynamo interface is over here, this tree of commands. So what they've done is there's hundreds or even thousands of commands or nodes in Dynamo, and they have them organized by what kind of node it is. For example, if we go on the input area. Under basic, these are the basic nodes for creating inputs. So we're going to be using some of these as we go through today. But the idea is that you just drill down this tree and then you could see the nodes and choose it that way. Or you could do a search. So if I wanted to search for a node that has the word string, there's lots of them. But the first one is the node I just mentioned. It's in the basic input, and this lets you enter a string. So two ways you can find nodes. You can find them by drilling down the tree, or you can find them by search. The biggest problem that people find in using Dynamo is getting used to finding the nodes they want to work with. And obviously, the more you use Dynamo, the more you know where those nodes are. It's going to be instinctive. You know it's down this tree, This is where it is. And today I'll try a couple of different approaches to show you how you can find those nodes. All right, so what do we want to do here? Oh, one other thing I'll mention is there is a scripting node under script editor, and this node is called Python script. Python's a programming language that you could use. So this is within the Dynamo environment. If you want to do some things that use the Revit API, you could write a program in Python that interacts using the Revit API, and then embed that block in a Dynamo program, and now you've got the mix of the API and Dynamo. So it's being able to access all of the API functionality within Dynamo itself. But that's not what we're going to do today. I just want to point out that it's there. So when you want to get some more hairy stuff, that's where you can go to the script and write some Python stuff. All right, that's not what we're doing. What are we doing? We want to go through those 4 steps, find all the doors, find the from and to rooms, find the rooms that have stairs in it, and then change those door types. All right, so the first step, I've got a string here, I don't need it. So the first step is to find all the doors. So that sounds to me like a Revit function. So we go into Revit, and it's a selection function. So under Revit selection, we have a list of the nodes that make sense for Revit selection. And the second one here, all elements of category board, that sounds awfully like it meets what we're looking for. So if we left click on that node, we get a node in the graph that says all elements of category. And if we hover over the name, it says get all elements of the specified category from the model. Cool, I want all the doors. Well, the input is object type category. So I can't type DOORS. That's not going to work. I have to find a category that ties to doors. Where am I going to find it? Well, I need a node to find it. There's a node called categories. And what the categories node does is it creates a list of all of the categories in Revit and then generates an object for that particular category. So left click on categories, move it over. So now we could say, I want to choose all the category doors. Got a very long list here. And then this is going to generate a category for me. And to see if I hover over the lower right of the node, it says doors. That's not the word doors, that's the category doors. And then left click on the output of that one, and left click on the input of that node. So now this wire connects this category, the door category, with the all elements of category. Got that? If you're successful and you hold your mouse over the lower right, you see a list of doors. That list has 18 doors in it, so those are all of the doors in this particular project. Oh, that was pretty easy. All right, let's see. Let's do something a bit more complicated. Any questions from the remote users? Okay.
Any questions from the in-person users?
And
Nope, we're doing good.
that's 1 out of 4. We're rolling right along. Okay, the next one's going to be a little bit harder. Remember, the next step was finding the rooms that the doors go from and to. Well, yeah, I'll give you a little hint here. There isn't an out-of-the-box function that does that. So we could search here, but we wouldn't find something that's really doing what we want. So we could do a Google search, or we could go to the forums, or we could go someplace like that and find what it is that that we're working with. And what we do is we'll eventually find that there's a package called Clockwork that has that particular function in it. So how do we get that package? We go to the package menu, search for a package, and it's going to take a second to sync with the server because it's online. And we're going to search for the word Clockwork, capital C. Remember, it's case sensitive. And here are 3 Clockwork packages for Dynamo 0, for Dynamo 1, for Dynamo 2. If you're using Revit 2022, then you'd need Dynamo 2. And there's on the left, there's an install latest version. So go ahead and click on that. And I've already got mine installed, so you're not going to see, but there's going to come back with a question, are you sure? Do you really want to do this? And the answer, of course, is yes. And then it's going to come back with another question warning you, this package uses Python, and you say, yeah, go ahead and install it anyway. Python could be a security problem if you weren't confident of the source. So that's why they're warning you. So after you say, okay, then you'll get a message, I think it's in blue in the lower left, saying it's installing. And after a little bit, it will say installed. When it's installed, it will show up in our tree on the left. You guys got yours installed? Cool. All right. So on the tree on the left, under the add-ons, we've got Clockwork. And if we open up Clockwork and look under Revit and look under Elements and look under Doors, there is this node called Rooms. And this node does exactly what we want. It's going to give us the rooms that are connected from a given door. So left click on that node, and now we've got door rooms. Now, if you were uncomfortable with that click, 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 that's go down that browser tree, we also could do a search for rooms, and here's the same node. So that probably would have been quicker if you didn't know where it was. One way or the other, you can always find the nodes. Okay, so here's the node room door.rooms. And what do we want as the input? We want a door as the input. Well, guess what? We've got a list of doors. So let's left click here, left click there. That creates a wire connecting the list of doors to the door.rooms. You also have an input for phase. So if I say I only want the doors in new construction, I could do that. But if I leave it blank, it's going to take the last phase, and that matches what I've got in this project, so I can just leave that blank. And now if we look at the output, and I'm going to pin the output because I'm going to scroll down on it. This is the output. It says I've got these rooms on the from list. So I've got 18 entries on the from list. And these are the to list, 18 entries on the to list. And you'll notice that some of these entries are null. And why is it null? Because that's an exterior door. Okay, so now we got a list of doors with the from to. All right, what's the next step? We need to check on which rooms have the word stairs in it. Well, let's see. That sounds like a string function. So if I go to string inspect contains, then that lets me look at the string, search for a particular value, a string, and over here it gives me a true or false on whether it's there or not. But notice it's looking for a string. Here I've got a room, so I've got to do a little bit of work in order to get the room name. So let's get the room name. Well, the name of the room is a parameter. We know what parameters are. So if we go Revit Elements Parameters, and parameter by name, what it does is it finds an elements parameter by name. So the elements is the room. the parameter I want is the name of the room. So I need a string. Let's create a string input node. And the parameter name is name, N-A-M-E, uppercase N. So what this is going to do is for each of the rooms in this list, we had 18 of them, it's going to create a list of the room names. Uh-oh, we got a problem here. Why is it turned yellow? It's turned yellow because remember we had some nulls in that list of rooms. So it's going to turn yellow because it's going to throw its hands up and say, hey, I don't know what null is. I can't give you a parameter for null. So it's just a warning. It's not a fatal error. It's just a warning. So I can go ahead and continue. Now, if I was going to make a nice, clean application, I'd do something different with the nulls. But for what we're doing today, screw it. We'll just ignore those nulls. So what we have now as an output is the name of the rooms. So that looks like room names, A, B, C, D, west stairs, east stairs, and so on. Okay, so we've got 18 names of rooms. Close, but no cigar, because what we have is a parameter object here, and we're looking for a string. Okay, so how do we do that? Well, let's go to the string functions, because it is a string function again, and go to the generate list, and generate string from object. So what generate string from object does is it takes an object, in this case the parameter, and changes it into a string. So this is now, it looks the same as what it did before, but now it's taking the name of the room, which was a parameter object, and changed it into a string object. Cool. We got the strings. We have to search for, what do we have to search for? The word stairs. Well, I've got a string node here, so something you can do to save time sometimes, just copy, paste, Control-C, Control-V, and I've got a string block here, and I want this to be the word stairs, capital S and plural. And I can left click to wire that up. So now I've got 18 room names coming in here, and the string I'm searching for here, and what comes out of it is 18 true or false statements. So it says for item 1 it's false, item 2 it's false, all the way down to item 7 is true, so that must go into one of the stair towers. And items 11, 12, and 13 are all true, so those go to the stair towers. So what we've done is we've filtered out from all of the rooms which ones have the word stairs in it. All right, any questions? We doing it right remotely?
Where did you get the parameters by name?
Okay, so the parameters by name is under, from the very top, go to Revit, Elements, scroll down to parameter by name. Or if you know what you're looking for, you can just type parameter by name. So that's probably quicker if you know what you're looking for. All right, so we did steps 1, 2, and 3 here. We've got the parameters that identify the name of the rooms. We've done a search on which rooms have the word stairs in it, and we've got a list of Booleans, true, false, for each of the doors. All right, so what we want is to have that list of doors, which ones were true. So there is a filter by mask function. I'm just looking at my cheat sheet on my right here. All right, so we have a list of Booleans, and we had a list of doors, remember that. So what we want to do is filter by mask. So if we go into the list folder, and we look at modify, there is a node that says filter by Boolean mask. So what this does is given a list of objects and given a list of mask values, true and false, it says these are the true and these are the false. Okay, well, what's the list of objects, excuse me, that we want to work with? That's the doors. So if we go all the way back to where we have the list of doors, left click, we can use that list as the input to this filter function. And for the mask, we can grab the Boolean list, left click to link it up. So now out of the 18 doors, based on this true false mask, we can see that there are 4 that fit into the true case, the in list, and 14 that fit in the out. This is exactly what we wanted to do. So we've got list of doors which open into the stairway. One more step to do, and that is to change the type of these 4 doors. The ones that aren't entering into stairway we don't care about. These are the 4 that we do care about. So we have to go and get, we want to change the type. There is a command called set type. So if we type set type up here, we'll see that there is a set type command. And notice these all come out of Clockwork. So it's a good thing we loaded that package because we can use it for 2 nodes. So there's a set type for a room, there's a set type for a dimension, and there's a set type for any family instance. This is the one we're going to use. So let's grab the set type for instance. And what do we have for the instances? Well, let's wire up those 4 doors. And then for the family type, we have to tell it what type we want to change those 4 doors to. Okay, so again, we got a string. So I'm going to Control C, Control V, get me a string node. And the name of this type, and we have to be exact here. Again, I'm going to cheat to make sure I get it exactly correct. 3/6" space lowercase x space 84" space fire resistant uppercase F uppercase R. So this is the name of the type of door that we're going to be using, but we need a family type here. So somehow we got to find the family type. So if we go into Revit, Elements, Family Type, by name, here we go. So it finds a family type by a particular name. Well, what's the name that we're using? It's this one. So left click, wire that up. And we can check that it found something. So it tells us the output now is family type. And so it found that family type. I typed it correctly. Now I'm going to take that family type and load it into this node. So now, if I look at the output of this node, it shows 4 objects that had the family type changed. And under success, it has true, 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 true. Yay! So what we've done with this Dynamo program is we found all the doors. We looked at the from to list for those doors. We filtered out only those doors opened into the stair towers. And then we changed the type of those 4 doors. Now, before we go any further, I just want to point out something. We took just the from list. We would need to do exactly what we did to the to list, because every door has a from and a to, and depending on your design requirements, you may have the door going to opening into the stair tower or opening from the stair tower. So you really would want to duplicate what we just did for the to list. But let's take a look at what we did, what we were successful. So here's the Revit model. If we hover over this particular door it's from a stair tower going to the outside, and now that's a fire-resistant door. This door is from the stair tower going into another room. That's a fire-resistant door. This door goes from room E into the west stairs. I haven't done the twos yet. I've only done the fronts. So that's why that one hasn't changed. And of course, on the second floor, we've got a couple more that have been changed. So this, with this Dynamo program, what we've done is we've been able to find the doors, sort them, and pick the ones that are to the stair towers and change the type. Questions from the field?
So it looks like there's a question. Someone's having trouble finding family type by name node.
All righty. So it's under the Revit, from the very top level, it's under the Revit folder. And under family type, oh, I think there's elements in there too. So Revit, family type, then by name. Or again, you can just do a search since we know what we're looking for. It's family by name, family type by name. What do we call it? Family type by name. So if we just type in family type dot by name, and here we go. So you can put it into the search box, and that's another way of finding it if you know what it is you're looking for. Oh, this isn't case sensitive. Well, that's good. All right, so I was warning you about all these case sensitive things that isn't case sensitive on the search, but everything in the programming is case sensitive, but in the search it's not. Okay, any other questions? All right, so.
Can you show me after the filter by Boolean mask, the list filter, but no, you have.
Okay.
At the end.
Well, the node is list filtered by Boolean mask. So from the very top, you go to the list branch, and under list, it tells you what are we going to do with the list. Well, we're going to modify the list. So it's under it's under list modify, and there it is, filtered by Boolean mask. So that takes a list and filters into the true and falses. All righty. So let's wrap up by talking about best practices. So what we see is that Dynamo has the ability to do a lot of automation. And here in just 20 minutes or so, we put together a Dynamo program that could save you an hour on the project. But more importantly, it could save you from an embarrassing error if you didn't have the right door and the right stair tower. In terms of best practices, we do recommend that in a organization, you have a central area that everybody puts their Dynamo programs in. It's really not a good idea if everybody writes their own Dynamo program, puts them in their desk drawer, and nobody else shares it. It's just so much more valuable. This is like a tool. You built a tool, make it available to everyone. Don't hide it. So that should be on your on-premises network or on a cloud network or someplace that everybody in the organization has the ability to access it. And if you are going to be sharing it with everybody, then you should have some kind of a naming convention. And you can see from the names of the nodes that we have here, they usually noun, verb, verb. So it can tell you, taking this kind of object, what are we going to do to it? So because all of the nodes are verbs, are action items, you want to have the naming convention show you that it's indeed a verb. So you use your naming conventions and have everybody agree to it. And perhaps you put the author's initials in the name. So if somebody has a question, they know who to ask. You do want to create a document that identifies what this does and any quirks, because we're all human. We're going to write a Dynamo program that does what we want, but we not necessarily take it the extra step to have it perfect under all conditions. So for example, on this Dynamo program we did right now, it creates a warning because doors to the exterior don't have a two-room. So that's the kind of quirk that I think needs to be documented. So somebody else runs it, they see a warning, throw their hands up and say, this doesn't work. Well, yes, it does. You just have to be aware that this is the issue. So you really want to establish a documentation process for identifying those kind of quirks. For those smaller architectural practices or engineering practices, probably everyone's going to create their own Dynamo program because you don't have the overhead resource of someone else doing it for you. So you're going to be creating your own. But even though you create your own, still recommend it's in a common area so everyone can share. And maybe you have a company meeting every month or whatever, and you say, oh, I did this and this and this, and everybody can access it. They're under these names. And now it starts to propagate. Everybody can take advantage of these productivity tools. When we get into larger practices where they can afford an overhead of a BIM coordinator or a BIM manager, most likely they're the people that would be the ones creating the Dynamo programs. Because if you're doing it on a daily basis, you're going to get really, really good at it. If you do one Dynamo program a month, you're going to be struggling a little bit as you go through and learn how to use it. So for a large practice, probably it's going to be delegated to the overhead resource, the BIM manager, to do these Dynamo programs. But I think it's important, even in large companies, that everyone gets a sense of what Dynamo can do so that they can talk to their BIM manager and say, well, I really want this, and I think it's doable in Dynamo, and then you can communicate back and forth. And you're not bothering them with things that Dynamo really can't do, like some of the huge applications I mentioned before. But the other thing I'd like to mention is that you really should, if you're involved in Dynamo, you should consider that there's continuous improvement. Autodesk comes out with new releases of Revit, new releases of Dynamo. They add more functionality, their API changes. There's lots of things that are constantly changing. You can look at the forums and see what other people have done. Because a lot of times you look at the forum and say, oh, wow, that's great. I could use this today. And then you could download a package and start using it right away. So you do want to stay involved. And MicroCAD provides training to get you started or to go into the advanced area of programming if you want to get into the API. So we provide those services, and we provide consulting. Sometimes you have an idea of what you want to do with a Dynamo program, but maybe you don't know how to structure it. So either we can come in and you can look over our shoulder, or conversely, we can tell you how to do it and we look over your shoulder as you do it. But either way, you end up with a successful application as opposed to struggling and trying this and trying that. And that may not be the best way to learn. So we can help you with that. So there's all of those resources that you have, both the free resources on the net, on the Dynamo community, and your local reseller of MicroCAD. And that basically is what I wanted to cover today. We talked about what Dynamo is, what it isn't. We actually walked through an exercise using Dynamo for what could be a real world problem. And again, if you want some more training or you want some more consulting, then we're available, we're accessible. You can see our offices throughout the country. Or you can contact me directly. My name and number is down on the lower left. Or you can contact Carolina. So
Great. So
I'll turn back to Carolina and see if there's any more questions.
Great. So thank you, Phil, for that wonderful presentation. It looks like we do have some questions coming in. So there are so many nodes. How do I find the one that I need?
That really is the hard question. And you're right that it's not obvious. The two ways out of the box that you could use, let's go to bring it back, is that you could do a search if you know the name of the node that you're looking for. So if you know that it is a parameter by name, and it's easy to find. But if you don't know the name of it, you could try something less. Like if you know it's working with parameters, but you don't know what it does, you get a list, and that's a shorter list than the thousands of nodes are total. So that might help you. Or you could do, as I did some of the cases, use the structure here. So I know it's a parameter by name is a Revit function, and I look at this list and say, well, it's not that, it's not that, it's not that. Oh, it's probably to do with elements. So now I go down under elements and I find parameters. Oh, that looks promising. And now I can find parameter by name. So those two ways, either you use the name and do a search, or a part of the name and do a search, or you use the drill down approach. The third approach, I'm not going to show you because I haven't got it set up that way, is you can actually go to Google and say Autodesk Dynamo and the name of what you want to do, and it might come back with exactly what you're looking for. Now, the only thing I warn you about in that is it might come back with lots of different packages. So you need to decide whether you want to download those packages or if you're going to use an out-of-the-box function. Generally, we recommend if there's an out-of-the-box function that Autodesk has provided, to use that rather than a package, simply because if it's out-of-the-box Revit, then you know it's supported, you know it's going to be the same, it's going to be updated every release. If you use a package, we've had situations where a package works on Revit 2021 and doesn't work in Revit 2022. So using the packages, generally you use those when you need them. You don't use them if there's that same function built in. Did that answer your question? I hope so.
If not, also this webinar is always recorded and we do send it out the following day. So you could always rewatch if you feel like you missed a step or something like that. You can always watch. It'll be posted on our YouTube as well. So as many times as you want, you can rewatch it.
Or you can contact me. I'll put back the slide with the contact information.
That as well.
There.
Perfect. Okay, so there's something called Dynamo in Civil 3D. Is that the same?
Yeah, thank you for asking that question, because you're absolutely right. Autodesk added Dynamo to Civil 3D, and so that works very much like the Revit package. It's the same Dynamo heart, but it has nodes that are suitable for the objects in a Civil 3D model. So you'd be doing pretty much the same thing that we did, only with civil objects. So instead of walls and doors, we've got grades, we've got alignments, we've got profiles. So there's different kinds of objects. But yes, it works very much the same way. And in fact, that Dynamo is a good approach for doing integration. So if you're doing campus designs and you need some Civil 3D work, so you have your civil guy creating a plan for the entire campus layout, and you want to bring that civil stuff into Revit, then using Dynamo, that's one way you can exchange information. Thank you for asking that. That's a fairly recent addition to Civil 3D.
Great. And then this looks like another question. Can Dynamo compare one project to another?
That's a good question. The answer is no. Dynamo's really intended to work within one Revit project. To do comparisons from one project to another, you probably need to get into the Forge API for the cloud-based applications or the Revit API for on-premises applications. We always think in terms of Forge because everyone's moving towards the cloud, and Forge is definitely the direction that Autodesk is going in. There's no question about that. Forge is the programming interface, the platform that lets people share data between Revit projects, and for that matter, between Revit and Civil 3D, between Revit and Inventor, and anything that's on the cloud. So for comparing from one project to another, I'd be leaning towards the Forge API. We can provide training and consulting on the Forge API or the Revit API, just like we can for Dynamo.
Great, and then it looks like the final question. So how did you know you needed the Clockwork package?
Yeah, I knew I wouldn't get away with that. I knew I needed the Clockwork package because I searched for 20 minutes trying to find the package that I needed in the base package, and then doing some Google searches and looking at the different packages and the contents. So obviously in a 45-minute webinar, I'm not going to spend 20 minutes poking around, but that's basically what happened. If you can't find it in the out-of-the-box stuff, then you go to the forums, you go to Google, and then you'll find it. In fact, there was a page that the author of Clockwork put together saying, here's some things that are in Clockwork we haven't found anyplace else. And, he's bragging about it, which is great. I'll give him all the credit in the world, and I'll take his software and use it. So it was a matter of, if I can't find it, then I know I need a package.
Great. And actually, last one. So do we offer Dynamo training?
Do we ever offer Dynamo training? Yes, we do. We've got a couple of different programs for Dynamo. We have a standard introduction to Dynamo. It gets you started. It's a one-day deal. We also have Advanced Dynamo, which is also one day that's tailored for either companies who are looking to integrate third-party applications or looking at some more advanced functions. So we do both of that training, and we can do custom training too. So if your organization needs particular kinds of Dynamo expertise, we can provide that.
Great. So yeah, you can always do the group class, or if not custom training, it can be anywhere from an hour or anything that you need. So nothing's too small or too big for you to take on with us. But that concludes this webinar. So thank you, Phil, for putting this wonderful presentation together. Thank you for everyone who attended in person. We look forward to having more kind of hybrid events, and be checking out our website for some more webinars, and you'll be getting the link with the recording the following day. So thank you all for attending. That concludes this webinar.